Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel for a jelly printing session. And today we are starting out with distress inks on the Gelli Plate, and this will be our base layer for the final prints. I experimented with this technique a few days ago, and I got such a lovely texture on the jelly prints with the distress inks underneath. That I really wanted to share this technique with you. We are starting out with the distress inks. I'm using my Gelli Plate to apply them. You can use your craft mat, of course. And I'm just doing the typical distress ink thing. I'm making a background by dipping in the paper into the inks that I have put on my Gelli Plate and then spritzed with water. I recommend trying this with different colors because you will get different results depending on the colors you're using. And I'm mixing that up today. I'm going to use different color combos for the distress inks, and then I will work with different acrylic paints over the top. I'm drying my distress ink layers in between because I want them to layer up, not to mix, so I get a really nice texture. I would say it's a little bit similar to a screen printing technique because you are layering up colors, and then these are transparent. The distress inks are transparent, and they will mix on the areas where they contact each other, just because of the layering. And we will use the same technique with the acrylic paints later. What you need is some acrylic paint that is transparent, so no opaque paints, because you won't get the same effect with opaque paints. So I would use just some pigments that are transparent, and you can see that usually on the bottle of your acrylic paints there is a little sign. It's very often it's just a square which is either empty, half filled, or filled. And if it's empty, you have a transparent color. I try to leave also white areas on the backgrounds because I think that's a bit important to really then get that texture popping up. And I'm just playing with different colors. I do not think about too much because the whole color will change once we are printing over that with the acrylic paint. And the distress ink will just give us some really interesting background texture. And depending on the color and on the layering, you will get different tones. And it's also a really nice thing to experiment with and to play. I let my backgrounds dry, and now I'm going in with the acrylic paints. I think I'm starting out with a burnt sienna color. I'm doing some autumnal backgrounds today. And I'm also going to, I think I start with the yellow. This is the Indian yellow from Schmincke, and it's a super transparent color. And I'm making autumn prints today, and I'm using some of our autumn leaves stamps to bring in even more texture to the print. You can, of course, use any texture tool you want to now make your pattern on the gel plate. And you have different options. You can either, like I do it for this first one, pick up the paint from the Gelli Plate and then stamp it to a scrap paper. But you could also stamp the leaves to one of the tags you've made, so you get even more texture later. I'm now laying one of the distress ink tags on top of the gel plate, and I just pick a bigger piece of paper so my hands don't get dirty, and I'm also picking up the color that is around the tag and I don't make a big mess. And that's what you're getting. I think that is a lovely start. And this could also be a nice way to then use such a tag and stamp the acrylic paint from the Gelli Plate onto it. And I think that's what I'm going to do in my next step. And it's really interesting what kind of different results you get depending on the colors you're picking. The next is I can't remember the color. I will try to not forget writing the names of the paints I'm using in the video description. It's a purple color from Amsterdam, which is also very transparent. And here you can see I just used that paint with the stamps on that tag I've printed previously because it was a little bit, I think there was missing something red, so I decided to use that. But you could also stamp to one that you have not printed yet and then print it with another color later, and that will also give you really lovely background texture. The stamp removes the acrylic paint from the Gelli Plate, and it's a bit important that you don't add too much paint to your gel plate, because first you want the leaves to be visible, and if you have too much paint on the plate you will not be able to pick up everything. And also you want a really thin layer of paint so that you can see the texture of the distress inks underneath. I have already used some of these backgrounds for some greeting cards, not the tags but the technique, and I really love that one. I think it's very lovely that the blue mixed with the violet to really dark violet, and the yellow I had mixed towards a red, and that gave really interesting color combo. I will share projects with these papers over on our blog during the next weeks, so just jump over and have a look. I of course also share some photos today over there so you can have a closer look at the prints I'm making. This is burnt sienna. It's also a transparent color, very lovely color for autumn. And I'm just doing the same thing. And here you can see I'm doing this technique I talked about before. I'm using the leaves and I'm stamping the acrylic paint to one of the tags, and I will print that tag later with a different color. Oh, you can also use the same color and then the colors will layer up and you will get also a hint of the leaf on the background. Not sure if I'm doing this or if I'm just saving it for another color. We will see. Yeah, I'm saving it. And then I just pick another one of my distress ink tags and lay it into the burnt sienna color. That's already really lovely, I think. You might have some tags in between that you like just as they are, and you could just use them without printing over them. I'll put a link into the video description to our blog so you can find that. I think that's also really lovely. And I will also put all the products I've been using into the video description. Of course, if you are enjoying the video, please give it a thumb up and leave me a comment. Thank you so much. The green is one of my favorite colors. It's the sap green from Schmincke. It's also very transparent, super beautiful color. I really love it for jelly printing and for backgrounds because it's such a lovely natural green, but not too much towards the olive green. I like olive green, but I use it so many times that I sometimes really would love to use a brighter green, but often greens look so yeah, oh, that's so lovely, isn't it? That's a wonderful background. I feel greens often look not natural. They look a bit weird often and too bright, and that's the reason why I really like this green, because it's not an olive green, but it's a natural green. Next, I think I'm going back to no, that's not purple, that's the Meadow Red, also from Schmincke, also transparent color, of course. And here you can see how thin I'm making my layer, because I want the background to show up, and I also want the leaf stamps to be able to remove the paint from the Gelli plate, so that I get a really interesting texture. Sometimes it's so less paint that stamping even doesn't work really well, but that does not matter because it's just a background texture. If you want to stamp with acrylic paint, I would just make the layer a little bit thicker of paint. Then you get a better stamp impression. I was so happy with these jelly prints that I made a ton of them. I made them for cards, I made them on tags, and you can use them for artist trading cards. You could make whole sheets of paper with this technique and then use them in your creative projects. Also one of my favorites. I think that turned out so amazing. Yeah, I'm really happy with these techniques. I'm now going to share some more backgrounds, and I have already prepped the distress inks, so you will not see how I made the backgrounds. I also used some oxides here just to experiment with. It's not a big difference, so you can use either or mix them up. And we will now print over those with the same technique. I also tried this technique with other stamps, of course, and I would definitely do even more prints with other color combos. I think it's such an interesting way to make jelly prints. If you don't have distress ink, I believe you should be able to make something very similar if you put watercolors down instead of distress inks. It's a bit harder to get that lovely texture you get by dipping in the paper into the distress inks, but I think you can get quite a similar effect with watercolors. And one more thing I'm going to try is to use brushes underneath, because I think you will also get really interesting backgrounds with those. If you're wondering if the acrylic paint is bad for the stamps or will dry on the stamps, of course it will dry on the stamps if you leave them. But once I'm done with jelly printing, I just go to the sink and wash the stamps with a little bit of mild soap and the brush you're using for your fingernails. And I carefully just go over the stamps, and the acrylic paint comes off very easily, so that's not an issue at all. If it happens that your paint gets really dry on the stamps, you can just lay the stamps into water for about 15 minutes or half an hour, and then it will also can peel off very easily. Just don't leave your stamps in water for days or for many hours, because they are soaking themselves up with water, and I'm not sure if this will affect the quality of it, so I would not do that. Now I messed up my brayer a little bit with too much paint. That's the Indian yellow again. I think I did not pick any other new color. What I'm thinking about trying, but I haven't for this video, I'm just making one print with a opaque paint over the top. Not a color paint, but white or some kind of light paint, like a Naples yellow greenish from Amsterdam, which is a very light toned color. I would just try that to see how this is turning out. I think it doesn't turn out pretty, but maybe you will get a really interesting grungy background. So I will definitely try that to see what happens. And that's what I always recommend with your materials. If you are working with mixed media and you like different materials, just experiment and play, and you will always learn something, and you will always get new ideas when you do that. So I always just try things, and sometimes I do not think about what I'm going to try. I just grab my supplies and play with them, and then new things start happening, and that's the fun part, I think, of the creative process. That's also a very lovely color. I think this is a good background to add a little bit more, maybe some stamping of the leaves, because the yellow is not very contrasting against a white, so you are not able, or against any other color, you are not able to see the leaves I've made on the Gelli Plate at first sight, but you will see them obviously on the background. Here I picked another color. That's the Cobal Turquoise from Schmincke, and this is not 100% transparent paint or translucent paint. It's a semi-transparent paint, which means it's a bit of opaque, but not 100%. And I wanted to try that because I really like a turquoise together with autumnal colors, as to me it always reminds me on a sunny autumn day where you have a really blue sky, and it also is a complementary color to orange, and orange is the main color I think we have in autumn. Brown tones, orange, reddish, yellow, and that's a complementary color, and that makes everything more interesting. And that's why I really like a turquoise combined with autumnal colors. And I also really like this print. I think it's perfect to combine it with an autumnal theme. And as I said, I'm going to post the cards I'm making and the tags all on our blog during the next weeks, so you can see what I'm actually doing with the backgrounds. I think I have only one background left now for the last print. And I think I was already thinking about doing an opaque layer, but then I decided not to waste that distress ink background. But I will definitely try that with an opaquer light acrylic paint to see what happens. This is the burnt sienna again. Love this color. I think it's the perfect autumn color. And I'm doing the same thing. For this print, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that dry on the Gelli plate before I remove it, just to make sure that everything comes off the plate, and also the little bits and pieces that were on the plate from the other prints. So usually that gives a really nice print with a lot of texture going on. Yeah, and I also really like that. It has kind of a rusty look. That was my video for today. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you like the technique. Please share it, please leave a comment, and hopefully we will see us next time. Bye!